Spain's six-month presidency of the Council of the EU kicks off in Madrid.
A two-day summit to iron out a trade deal between the EU and South America gets underway in Argentina.
An international center aimed at investigating Russian war crimes during the invasion of Ukraine has been set up in the Netherlands.
Spain's six-month presidency of the Council of the EU kicks off, and it looks like the contentious issue of migration could already cause Madrid a headache. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and a bunch of her commissioners were in the Spanish capital to celebrate the start of the presidency. But after last week's EU summit, where Hungary and Poland showed their opposition to the recently reached agreement on migration, the topic looks like it could haunt Madrid's term. Von der Leyen says that Budapest and Warsaw will have to compromise and that Europe will continue to make progress on the issue.
The Pact for Migration and Asylum, the first important parts have been decided, like the treaty wants us to do, in qualified majority voting. This is the legislative track, and I'm very confident that we will be able to conclude it.
For Madrid, the priority is the reindustrialization of Europe. This means reducing its dependence on critical raw materials and strategic components, especially in a geopolitical context marked by tensions with Russia and also China. It's why Spain's Prime Minister is seeking to strengthen ties with Latin America. One of his objectives will be to close some of the pending trade agreements, including with the Mercosur bloc.
Y en este proceso, creo que Europa necesitará muchos más aliados de los que tiene, y desde España estamos convencidos de que la región de la América Latina y el Caribe puede y debe ser una de ellas.
Spain also wants to ensure that support for Ukraine is maintained. But that's not before elections will take place in the Mediterranean country at the end of July, which could see a new party in government. Pedro Sanchez's Socialist Party trailed the right-wing Popular Party by a significant margin, at the same time as the far-right Vox have also seen a surge in popularity over the past few months.
Cambie o no cambie el color de gobierno, es posible que el trabajo de España durante su presidencia semestral no cambie de forma drástica. Desde el Tratado de Lisboa, el peso de la presidencia es menor y el principal rol que tienen los países que la ostentan es ejercer de árbitro ante las reuniones de ministros. Además, esta se trata de la última presidencia completa antes de las elecciones europeas de junio de 2024, por lo que la mayoría de dosieres ya están casi cerrados. Sea lo que tenga que pasar, no lo sabremos hasta finales de julio.
A two-day summit to discuss future relations between the European Union and much of South America began in Puerto Iguazu in Argentina on Monday. The aim is to break down the last obstacles in a trade agreement between the EU and the South American trade bloc Mercosur. Made up of Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay, this regional bloc reached a deal in principle with the EU in 2019 after 2 decades of negotiations. Concerns of some European governments about environmental protection, especially in the Amazon jungle, have so far paralysed the agreement. Mercosur represents 62% of South America's population and 67% of the continent's gross domestic product. The summit takes place 2 weeks after the start in Brussels of the first EU-Latin America talks in 8 years.
Ukrainian forces reportedly conducted counteroffensive operations in 6 sectors of the front on the 2nd of July and made gains in some of these areas. This is according to the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. Now let's take a closer look at the map to see where exactly these happened. Now, the Russian Defense Ministry and other Russian sources claim that Ukrainian forces conducted offensive operations in western Zaporizhia region. It's this area, also on the administrative border between Zaporizhia and Donetsk region, in western Donetsk region along the Avdiivka-Donetsk city front in the direction of Liman, and in the Bakhmut area right here. Russian media bloggers claim that Ukrainian forces advanced specifically southwest of Klishivka. Now, Klishivka is about 7 kilometers south of Bakhmut here. The Russian Ministry of Defense claimed that Russian forces repelled Ukrainian attacks near Bakhmut and Berhiivka, which is 6 kilometers north of Bakhmut. Ukrainian Eastern Group of Forces spokesperson Colonel Serhiy Cherevati reported on the 2nd of July that Ukrainian forces are continuing to advance on the flanks of Bakhmut here in this area. Russian forces are likely responding to Ukrainian operations around Bakhmut by pulling some forces from elsewhere in Ukraine. Ukrainian Eastern Group of Forces spokesperson reported that Russian forces recently transferred an unspecified Russian Airborne Forces regiment from the Liman direction, the area west of Kreminna, right here in the direction of Bakhmut. Serhiy Cherevati stated that Bakhmut continues to offer Russian forces more propaganda value than military benefits, and suggested that Russian forces may be concentrating elite forces in the Bakhmut area to preserve the perceived informational victory received from the capture of Bakhmut on the 21st of May.
International prosecutors have joined forces to create a body to investigate crimes of aggression following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The International Center for the Prosecution of Crimes of Aggression against Ukraine will be coordinated by the EU's justice agency, Eurojust, in The Hague. It will probe crimes that are beyond the scope of other international legal authorities.
The Member States will play a crucial role in collecting evidence, identify witnesses and possible suspects, in executing arrest warrants, including those issued by the International Criminal Court, and in ensuring that the perpetrators of such hideous crimes cannot hide from justice.
Ukraine says the center will combat aggression that poses a threat to the entire international community.
Russia's aggression against Ukraine and its continuous use of force against sovereignty, territorial integrity and political independence that threatened Ukraine's very existence is not only directed against my country. It stands as a global threat to peace, security and stability.
The International Criminal Court is investigating war crimes in Ukraine, but it doesn't have the jurisdiction to prosecute crimes of aggression. The new body will do that and is a first step towards possible tribunals of senior Russian figures.
Fierce clashes have erupted in Jenin following an Israeli operation in the West Bank city that left at least 8 people dead. Drones struck at what Israel says were militant targets, while ground forces raided the area's refugee camp. The Palestinian Prime Minister said Israel wanted to wipe out the camp.
هذا العدوان حلقة مكملة لما يقوم به المستوطنون من إرهاب واعتداءات. إننا ندعو العالم إلى وقف العدوان على أهلنا في جنين فورا، وندعو إلى التصدي له والتصدي لقطعان المستوطنين، ونطالب بإيقاع كل عقوبات ممكنة بحق إسرائيل المعتدية والتي ترعى الإرهاب وإرهاب المستوطنين.
Israel said the Jenin camp has been a hub of militant activity from which attacks on its territory have been launched.
We want a break of the camp being a safe haven for terrorists who were performing attacks all over Judea and Samaria, and they were running back to hide inside the camp. This will not be a safe haven for these terrorists, and that's why we're acting.
The raid has been described as the largest Israeli operation in the area for more than a year. And the army said it was likely to continue for several days. Rallies have taken place in front of town halls across France in solidarity with the mayor of L'Île-Rose, whose home was attacked during the riots that have shaken the country. The violence followed the fatal shooting of a young black man at a checkpoint in Nanterre.
Sur cette voie-là, nous souhaitons que justice soit rendue pour Naël et que l'appel à cesser les violences et les dégradations lancées par la famille de Naël, et notamment par sa grand-mère, soit entendu et respecté.
Paris has also fallen victim to the wave of attacks and looting that have accompanied the riots. And Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo joined with others in condemning the violence.
Nous avons ici condamné sans aucune réserve, les violences et les atteintes contre les biens et les personnes.
City halls, police stations, buses, trams, shops and warehouses, nothing was spared by the outburst of anger triggered by the death of young Nael. There is multi-million euro destruction, thousands of arrests and numerous injuries. A young firefighter died of a heart attack while putting out an arson attack. The government insists the violence is under control.
The last surviving member of an elite French unit that joined US and other Allied forces in the D-Day invasion has died. Léon Gauthier was 100 years old. The death was announced by the mayor of Ouistreham, where Gauthier lived out his last years. Gautier's Kiefer Commando unit was among the first waves of Allied troops to storm Normandy, beginning the liberation of Western Europe. Gauthier was a nationally known figure and met with President Emmanuel Macron as part of commemorations for the 79th anniversary of D-Day last month.
Germany's bomb squad has successfully defused a 250-kilogram British aerial bomb left over from World War II. The explosive was discovered during construction work in the town of Kiel on Germany's Baltic Sea coast. The authorities advised around 3,000 residents to leave the area before the operation to disarm the bomb began. Even so, 200 emergency services personnel were on standby. The operation took 3 hours.